Welcome. In this lesson, I will introduce Play Evolutions into our project. I will show you how to create a script and how to apply the changes. So let's start by adding the necessary dependencies in the build.sbt file. We are going to need the evolutions and the JDBC dependency. Once you have entered it, refresh again so that the dependencies get downloaded. Once this is done, make sure to open the conf folder and create a directory in there called evolutions, and then in the evolutions another one called the database name of your database, which is default at the moment, and in there you can put your evolution scripts with the syntax 1, 2, 3 and so on, so that Play Evolutions know in which order to execute them. So I will just create one.sql for now. When it comes to the syntax, you can write comments with minus minus at the beginning. It should also work with dash dash, but this is not preferred solution since it's not supported by all databases. So I will stick with the minus character, and then it's separated into two parts. The first one is so-called apps. That's the place where you write whatever you want to execute against the database, and in the downs part you define basically whatever you want to be executed in the rollback situation, and that's again defined in a comment but with this syntax. So whenever you write a comment and it's not supposed to be something you want to execute, make sure to not include this string in it. So in our case we want to define the SQL statement, so let's write create table and let's create the posts table for our posts. You close the statement with a semicolon, and that's another relevant thing. Basically, Play separates the single SQL queries by the semicolon, so make sure if you need it inside of the statement to escape it, and you escape it just by adding a semicolon in front. So that would mean you just write two semicolons. In our case, we want to define ID column of type integer, let's say. It can of course not be null since it's the primary key. And we can say we want it to be auto incremental. Then we have the title, which is a varchar, let's say maximum of 100 characters. It also cannot be null. And then we have the content, where we actually in the front end already specify the maximum of 200 characters. So let's use the same logic here. For the first one, for the title, we don't have the syntax, so logically you would add this validation as well. I will skip it for now. And then in the second part of the document, in the same way you define a comment. Now it's just called downs, and that's where you define whatever needs to be executed in case of rollback. So in our case it makes sense to drop the table. Okay, it's worthwhile mentioning that evolutions are automatically activated if there is a database configuration in the application conf file and if scripts are of course present in the correct location. Of course you can also disable it in the application.configuration. This is the place, as I already mentioned, where you keep the configuration for your whole application, and that's also of course the case for evolutions. You will do it by typing play.evolutions.enabled and then putting it to false. In our case, that's not what we want to do. Additionally, I will just show you a link in the browser where you can find more configuration. Of course, you will find the link provided attached to the lesson. Here you can find some additional interesting configuration options you might want to consider when building your application. For now, let's head back to IntelliJ. Maybe one last thing which occurs quite frequently, which is important and good to know, is that Play executes those scripts in single transactions. That means that your 1.sql, 2.sql will all be executed in separated, dedicated transactions, and that's something you might not want to have, especially in the development phase. You could say I want to have everything run in the same transaction, and if there is any error in any script, I want to roll back and have a clean database state. You would achieve that by adding a configuration, so-called play.evolutions.autocommit equals false. Okay, but I will also remove that for now. Let's actually run our application with sbt run or with the debug script. It doesn't really matter. Once it's up, let's go to the browser. Let's refresh the page, And as expected, player recognizes that there are evolution scripts which have not been applied yet and asks you if you want to apply them now. You just click on the apply this script button, and that's it. How do you now verify that anything happened? Go back to IntelliJ and stop the application. Then run SBT again locally. The reason you can't log into SBT and open the H2 browser is that the Play application is already using the connection and the H2 browser doesn't accept a new one in parallel. So we quit the application first and then we enter H2-browser. As expected, this opens a new window. Let's enter our password. Let's connect. And you can already see here two new tables. The post table, which is the one we created, and the Play Evolutions table. Let's take a look. As expected, this one is empty, but let's open the Play Evolutions table. And here you can find interesting things like the ID, the hash, when it was applied, the exact script, the revert script, the status, which is applied, and basically this is the table which Play is using to keep track of the applied and not applied evolution scripts. If you would now change the content of the script, the hash would not be the same and you would need to reapply it again. That's in short Play Evolutions. Well done.